Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I don't know about you. We like switched up our music. So I'm here like, oh, this music's fun. I like it. I am so excited for you guys to be joining us today. This event is long overdue. It's been something that our members have requested for quite a while. And I think it was a matter of getting like the right people involved. So we were able to successfully do that, who I'm going to be introducing to you very soon. In fact, we have 4 experts in a variety of different spaces, some like more related to influencer marketing than others, but knowing that like we're all well-rounded women and we need all the knowledge that will make us even more successful surrounding money. What a crazy topic to be taboo, right? Like that's a crazy notion to me. Anyways, I am Jessie Grossman, by the way. I'm the founder of WIM, short for Women in Influencer Marketing. And we have such an exciting evening for you guys if you're tuning in on the East Coast, and afternoon if you're elsewhere for the most part. So we have 4 speakers, like I mentioned, who I'm going to be introducing to you very soon. But stick around, definitely get active in the chat as well. We want to hear from you. Our events, we always try to keep them light and fun. So I think the first thing I would love to ask is, where is everyone tuning in from? We already have someone who said, hi, tuning in from Chicago. I'm actually headed there later this month, so I love that you're there. Let us know where you guys are tuning in from. Our speakers will also be available, most of them, for questions as well. They'll let you know during all of their talks. So don't be shy. Get active in the chat. Let us know more about you so that we can serve you in these conversations. So first up, we have one other person who said they're in from New Jersey. I'm on the East Coast, so I love my East Coasters as well. From St. Paul, Minnesota. We get people from all over, which I love more than anything. We usually have some people internationally, which always like surprises me every time. It's great to have you guys joining today. All right. So I am going to bring up our first guest speaker. Her name is Mel Rubin. Mel, let me bring you up to the stage right now. Welcome, Mel.
Thank you.
I am so excited to hear from you. I think you're such a great person to start this conversation. Maybe a good place to start is a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into your topic. So welcome, Mel.
Awesome. Great. Thanks. Hi, Jessie. Hi, everybody. My name is Mel Rubin. I am a financial coach or financial educator and money coach. I am not a financial advisor. I am not an accountant. I believe there's a tax expert that you'll be hearing from after me. So I am not that either. I am just a person who really loves personal finance and specifically loves talking to people about it, and specifically talking to women about it, because I believe, like me, this is not something I studied. This is not something we were ever taught. So I'm trying to take us back to elementary school in a way and explain all of this stuff like we are 5 years old, back to the classroom, as if we never learned it, because the truth is, a lot of us never did. So with that, I'm going to, can you all see my presentation? Yeah, there we go. This is investing. Explain it to me like I'm 5. I like to theme it around a playground. So today, welcome to Mel's Payground, I like to say. Once again, this is not financial advice. This is for educational purposes only. Yeah, I hope you walk away from this with just a little bit more of an understanding of why investing is important. I'm going to spend some time more on that and the mindset, and less on the buttons to press of how to buy an investment, because that's something you can look up after this. I think it's really important to talk about why it's important to invest. So welcome. And with that, I would love in the chat to get some money wintros from you all. So drop a recent money win in the chat, or maybe something you recently splurged on. If you can't think of a money win, I just love that question of, what is something you recently splurged on that was just for you? This doesn't have to be something that was expensive. This just has to be something that you don't typically get for yourself, and you did it recently and you were like, yeah, that was worth it. No regrets there. But also, if you have a recent money win, something that you were like, oh, last month I opened a Roth IRA, or last month I made coffee at home instead of buying coffee out. These are all little money wins that I would love to hear about. So while we hear some of those, yes, got your first payment from your side hustle. Honestly, Amelia, kind of same with this money coaching things. I like did the first version of a new thing with what I'm doing here and got paid for it. And I was like, ooh, I like that. Awesome. We'll keep throwing those in the chat, and we'll move on here to some fundamentals. That's a play on the word fund, like investment fund. You get it. So growing up, what kind of lessons were you taught about money? And you can go ahead and throw some of these in the chat. These might be like phrases that stuck with you from childhood, maybe things you observed in the house of how your parents or guardians handled money, methods, or just things you observed, phrases that come to mind. I would also be really interested to know who here was taught save your money, save, save, save. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's probably a decent amount of you, especially as women in this event. There's a lot of studies done that in households where, for example, it's a mom, a dad, a son, and a daughter, that the dad pulls the son, or I'll start with the mom. Mom typically pulls the daughter aside and says, save your money, save, right? Does that feel familiar to anybody? Save your money, save, yeah, risk adverse, save. You never know when the apocalypse is coming, save. The other side of the token, this is a study that shows this, the father will pull the son aside and say, hey, kid, let me teach you about the stock market. Let me show you how to invest. Let me teach you what this means. But as women and as little girls, we were never taught that. And I think it's mind-blowing and mind-boggling. Why? Why do little boys and men grow up to get to talk about building wealth on the golf course, yet we're over here talking about our curly hair method, right? Like, this is a conversation that we should all be a part of. So just interesting to take note of how you grew up and what some of those lessons were. We've probably all heard the phrase, money can't buy happiness, right? But I believe that, I think that's true, but I think money can buy you options, and those options can lead to happiness in many ways. So there's a phrase you've probably heard called financial freedom. And that just means having enough money to feel like you can spend money on other things outside of just your fixed costs and things you have to spend money on. So some of those options that I was talking about, let me know if any of these sound good to you or familiar to you, and please add more to this list in the chat. But some of those options are escaping an unsafe situation, donating to causes you believe in, eating healthier food, going to therapy, traveling, physical fitness, continued education, retiring early. Yes, I want that one. And making new career moves. I think a lot of people in this event tonight are probably people who have made new career moves, and maybe solopreneurs and people who own their own business. Those are scary moves to make when financially you're maybe not in like a super secure position, right? So yeah, throw some more. I love that. Having children. Go ahead and give me some more in the chat. What else would you add to this list of things that if you just had a little extra money, or you felt like you've built some wealth and in 10, 15 years, you're like, oh, that's what I would love. Or even now, think in a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, what would you love to be able to spend more money on? I love this quote that I'm about to show from Tori Dunlap. She runs a company called Her First 100K. Great Instagram presence. There's a great podcast called Financial Feminist that she runs. And this quote is just taken from a recent Instagram video of her talking to her phone in her car. But I was like, I have to quote this. Yes, vacations. We all want more of those. So here's that quote. I'm going to read it out loud. If you are a woman, and especially if you are another minority, such as a woman of color, a queer woman, or a disabled woman, it is an act of protest to have a financial education, financial stability, and financial freedom, because you never, ever have to stay in a situation that doesn't respect you. How good is that? Thinking about having this education and as building wealth as an act of protest. Sorry, I live in New York if you hear the sirens. Brooklyn, where are you at? I just love the way that Tori explains that. It's an act of protest. Yeah. Why is this thing that we feel shame over? The idea of building wealth as women, we're like, no. I probably shouldn't. I'll leave that to the men. Why? It's such an act of protest to have that control and to have that understanding and to do something with it. So I just love that. So the main things that tend to hold people back from investing are decision fatigue, also sometimes called analysis paralysis, right? There's too many options. What brokerage account do you use? What do you invest in? What if you pick the wrong stock? How do you know what kind of retirement account you need? Can someone please explain what a Bitcoin is? That question is real. I still am not quite sure what a Bitcoin is. Some other ones, thinking you need a certain amount to start. I'm guilty of that. As a new investor, I always thought, you need $10,000 to invest before you can get started. You can't start with $100 or $20 or $50. I need $10,000. Don't know where I got that number, but I think a lot of us maybe have that number in mind, and we're like, we're not going to touch investing until we have a certain amount saved up. Here's another one: trying to time when to invest based on how the stock market is doing. Right now, if you've been paying attention to the news, you might know that the stock market's not doing great because there's a war happening. These things happen. And a lot of times people will say, well, I heard it's not a great time to invest, so I'm just going to wait a little bit. And spoiler alert, there is no right time. The right time was 20 years ago for all of us, I'm sure. So the second best time is today. Another one, the idea of logging into your account, seeing all of the red numbers, thinking your hard-earned money is all gone and there's no way to get it back, right? Years of saving, poof, gone. The stock market gods took it away and I can never get it back. Let me know in the chat if any of these are sounding familiar. I think it can feel scary to gamble your money. So instead of learning just a little bit more about how this all works, we simply don't invest because investing isn't for us, right? How many people have said that? Oh, investing, that's not for me. That's for somebody else, I'm sure. I also love this quote that I heard that's like, investing is for rich people. But the truth is, investing is how you become the rich person. So I like reframing it in that way too. All of these thoughts are valid, but they are also by design to hold you back from investing on your own, especially as women. This is by design to either keep you on the sidelines or so you hire someone else to manage it for you. This is not something we were ever taught. And the people in the finance industry don't actually want you to know how simple it can be. They capitalize on your fear and then they prey on you in a financial way, right? I've been there. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but we've all maybe felt that before. All right, everyone, take a deep breath, grab a paper bag nearby if you have one. You're doing great. Let's talk about it. If you only have money in a checking or a savings account, you are losing money every day that you do not invest. Can anybody tell me why? Go ahead, throw some guesses in the chat. Begins with the letter I. I'm just going to tell you in like 5 seconds. Compound interest. That's a good guess. That's a good guess. And that is how you make money using compound interest. But the reason you're losing money every day, if your money is just sitting in a checking account or in a regular savings account, inflation, the big I word. So what is inflation? It's the general increase in prices of about 2% every year for goods and services. So basically your money now buys less than it used to, which reduces its purchasing power. We all know what happened to the eggs, right? So it's this idea of things are getting more expensive. And if money is just sitting in your checking account, it's not making that compound interest like Devin was talking about. So it's actually losing value because it can't keep up at that 2% level. Similarly, I love high yield savings accounts. I'm not really going to go into it in this little session, but a high yield savings account is a way to keep up with inflation because you generally make about 3 to 4% back on the money you keep in that account. So I love put your emergency fund in a high yield savings account if you don't already have one. So that's how you keep up with inflation, right? But now how do we not only keep up with it, but outpace it, but build wealth, but make that money? It's another scary I word, and I'm going to do a little daunting introduction. Here we go. Boom, boom, dun, 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 boom, doo, doo, scary. Wolf of Wall Street. Buy, hold, sell. Dun, 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 to Bitcoin. Doo, 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 doo. Ah, please turn green for the love of God. Another deep breath. Okay. The word is investing. That's the only way. Do I wish capitalism didn't play such a huge role in how we build wealth? Yes. Do I wish we could all just get an 8 to 10, maybe 12% increase at our jobs that we're so good at, by the way, every year instead of having to contribute to a system that we have very little control over? Of course I do. Do I wish the way to build financial safety felt a little safer? I really do. But unfortunately, like Bo Burnham says, that is how the world works, or at least the world we live in now. There is simply no other way to make 10% back every single year and build that wealth. Unless you have a really great job, please throw that job description and application in the chat. I would love to apply for it. This simulation of the world we're in right now, this is the way. So it's kind of like, even if it feels icky or it feels like, the stock market, gross, that really is the way to build wealth. And if you can't beat them, join them. It's really one of those situations. So let's talk through it. When can you actually lose money in the stock market? Does anybody know when you can actually lose money? All right, I'm just going to tell you. It's when you sell. Specifically when you sell for less than you bought in for, but it's when you sell. Similarly, when can you make money in the stock market? also when you sell. So people who right now, 2026, there's a war happening, they're looking at their accounts. You've probably heard people say, oh my God, I lost $5,000 this week. They didn't lose anything unless they sold, which they probably didn't. It's scary to look at, and it can be intimidating to see that number go down. But until you sell, you have not lost anything. So investing can actually be more predictable and reliable than you might think. So let's take the S&P 500, for example. This is like a benchmark of how the stock market is doing as a whole. It's 500 of the top US companies that basically, I don't want to say control the stock market, but heavily influence how the market is doing as a whole. So what has been the average return of the S&P 500 over any 10-year stretch in history, any 10-year stretch? And by the way, the S&P 500 has been around since like 1957, but before that, there were other funds that were very similar. Remember, your high yield savings account is probably around 3 to 4% of what you're making back on what you put in. Yeah, Devin, great job. Yeah, perfect. It's been 10.29% over the course of history, right? That's a lot better than our 3% from our savings account and a lot better from our 0 from our checking account. I'll take a 10.29% raise any day. But let's talk about what investing in the stock market actually means. It can feel like a seesaw. Remember, this is a playground theme. So the value of stocks can go up and down by the second. If you log on and you search for any stock or fund right now, you'll see every time you refresh, it's red, it's green, it's red, it's green, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, just like a seesaw. But think about your investments and maybe your investment portfolio. That's what you are invested in. Think of it like checking current house values on Zillow, right? So say you buy a house for $500,000. A year from now, you look up your address on Zillow, you're curious how much your house is worth, and it's $400,000. Did you just lose $100,000? No, because you still live there and you haven't sold your house yet. Similarly, if you look it up a year after that and it says it's $700,000, did you just make $200,000? No, because you still live there, right? You haven't sold yet. So you're just looking at the value. It's the exact same thing as what you're invested in the stock market. I used to always think that if I invested in something like the S&P 500 and my account went way down, 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 down and got to 0, that like game over, you lose. I didn't understand that concept, that it was just the value, and it's almost impossible for that to happen unless every single company in the world just doesn't exist anymore, which we know can never and will never happen. So over any 10-year stretch, the S&P 500 has consistently delivered positive returns 93% of the time. So that's any version of 10 years, March 2006 to March 2016, and so on and so forth. 93% of the time over any of those stretches, it's been positive. So that's a pretty good number. I like that. The stock market has always gone back up after big stock market events like the Great Depression, the 2008 crash, COVID, hopefully after the war we're in right now. It always goes back up. In fact, it always shoots back up. So people who, what they call panic sold, so they saw their account value going down and they said, this is actually it, COVID, right? They were like, this is it. It's never going back up from here. We're done. So they sold. They missed like the greatest next 3 years in stock market history. And that's true. That's been true for most of these big events. So if past performance is any indication of future, which again, no promises, we never know, but if that's true, you will likely see returns of around 10% over the course of your investing journey. I like that number a lot. Here's just a little visual example for my visual learners of the S&P 500 since 1980. So that's a lot of green. I like all that green. And of course, there's some red. Those are years that the dot-com boom in 2000 and 2008 and 2022. There's been some years where it's dipped into red. That's why we say it's been an average of 10% in green positive, because some years in green, it's 30%, 40%, 25%. But if you take into account the lower years, it all averages out to about 10%. All right. Any money that you may need in the next few years, I think you should put it into a high yield savings account. So this is for short-term goals, anything within the next, from now until 3 to 4 years from now. So if you're saving up for a house that you're planning on buying in 3 years, or you're getting married in 3 years or 2 years, we don't want to put all of that money into investments, because we want to allot for that time of the market. If it dips for a couple of years, we don't want to be forced to sell when we really need that money. So keep everything, all those short-term goals, in a high yield savings account. You could also sort of tackle both at the same time, throw some into your savings and some into investing at the same time, but just make a plan for yourself that makes sense. But investments should really be for anything, I'd say, like if you really don't need to touch it, from like 4 or 5 years on. And a lot of them are retirement accounts, so you literally can't touch them. You're not allowed to until then. There are different investing strategies that are lower risk and more predictable based on history, and they require very little maintenance. So I'm just going to touch on what those are right now. You might have heard of what's called an index fund. So this is a fund that holds a bunch of different stocks inside of it. So there is literally an S&P 500 index fund. So a lot of people think, well, I don't want to invest because I don't know what stocks to pick. Great. Me neither. We're not doing that. We're picking one fund that holds a bunch of stocks that has had a steady and consistent return since its inception, and we're rocking and rolling. We're never looking at it. So something like an S&P 500 fund is great. If you're investing in something like a Roth IRA, which is a retirement account, there's what's called a target date index fund. And those, you just search your anticipated retirement year. It's within like every 5 years. So 2050, 2055, 2060, you'd search for your year and you could just dump all your money into that one single fund, and it'll do the work for you over time as you get closer to retirement to make it a little bit more conservative and bond heavy and a little less stock heavy as you get older. One fund, you don't even have to think about it. You just have to keep putting the money in and letting it do its job. I want you to be able to set it, forget it, be boring, be consistent. So a big question, of course, is, all right, Mel, this sounds great. When can I start? Am I allowed to start right now? I like to follow the 7% rule. Did everyone see that the ladder of the slide turn into a 7? Hit me up for your graphic design needs. So the 7% rule basically says if you have any debt where the interest is over 7%, higher than 7%, pay that off before you start investing. So this is usually credit cards, right? Those things are like 24% interest. You're not going to make more in the stock market than you're losing to that 24%. Now, if you have debt where the interest is less than 7%, so this is something like student loans, maybe a mortgage, a car loan, all of those, you can start investing while you just keep paying the minimum payments on those things. We don't need to aggressively, this is something I also did without knowing. Years ago, I was like, I don't want my student loans anymore. I'm just going to aggressively pay them off, get them out of here. That actually wasn't really a great plan now that I've learned, because the interest rate was like 4.5%. So in that time, I lost all those years that I could have been investing and making more to just trying to pay off my low interest debt. So I'd say, don't do that. The stock market delivers an average of 8 to 10% annually, like I said. So if that debt interest rate is lower than 7%, it's growing at a slower rate than your investments. Now, the only exception, cue Paramore here, to that first rule about if you have credit card debt, maybe waiting to start, is if your employer offers a 401k or maybe a 403b, if they offer a match, because that is free money you are leaving on the table. It's the only time you'll get an 100% return on your investment. So for some people, even if you have high interest debt, doing a combination of at least contributing enough to that 401k just to get the match while you tackle the high interest debt, it's a great way to get started on your investing journey, especially for people who have a lot of credit card debt. They're like, I'm not going to pay this off in the next 10 years. Do I really need to wait to start investing? I would say yes, unless you can get this match, then you can kind of sneak in and get started. All right, I'm going to try to wrap up quickly here. So what is compound interest? What is compound interest, and why are the finance bros obsessed with talking about it? Compound interest is basically just your money turning into more money into more money. Here's this chart that I think explains it perfectly, so I'll just show it to you. But this assumes somebody invests $10,000 a year into the stock market. So just $10,000 flat. That is that like pinkish purplish color at the top of that chart. The blue color is the compound interest working for you. Basically, that 10% return that you're getting is now your new total. And then you're making a 10% return on that. And then a 10% return on that. And then on that. And it compounds and compounds and compounds. And you can see that getting that first 100K can take almost 8 years if you're investing 10,000 a year on average. After that, the next 100K, 5 years, the next 100K under 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, until by the time you hit $1 million, it's a year. For every $100,000, it's a year. I would love to just make $100,000 of passive income every single year, right? Doesn't that sound great? So the hardest part is really that first 100K, but that's not a reason to not get started. Even if you just have a small amount to invest right now, even if it's $20 a month, it still works for you. Yeah, is there an app? Devin, great question. Is there an app for this topic? There are a bunch of apps. There's one that people really like. This is more for budgeting, but it's called You Need a Budget, YNAB. I personally don't use it because I'm very much in the business of trying to avoid paying for finance apps on things that we can do on our own. But there's also really great books and podcasts and things like that I'll just say Ramit Sethi, I really love his work, and Tori Dunlap are two great ones to look into their books and their podcasts. They're awesome. So yeah, this chart, pretty mind-blowing, right? I love looking at it. I feel similarly. She's growing so fast. We're so proud of her. Just to wrap up here, I'll just give a very brief overview of what this investment ladder is. And I cover more of this. I have a full 2-hour version of this workshop where I really go into the weeds here. But if you're someone who's just like, Mel, tell me the order of accounts and I can do the rest, here you go. So this obviously can change based on your age and your individual goals, and if you are a solo, if you're solo employed, or if you have an employer. But basically, step one, get that employer match from your 401k if offered. If not, okay, yeah, do that. And then after that, we're going to pause and we're going to pay off our high interest debt. So don't pass go until you pay off that high interest debt. Next, we're going to contribute to a Roth IRA. I love Roth IRAs. The short version here of what that is, it's a retirement account that you put money into and the money grows tax-free. And when you go to take it out in retirement, everything is tax-free. You do not owe taxes on that money because technically you've already paid taxes on the money going in. So you'd open an account through like Fidelity or Vanguard. There's plenty of videos and information on this online, but the money grows tax-free. And then when you take it out in 30 years, you do not owe a cent of taxes on that money, which I love. Next, if your employer offers a health savings account, that's a really great investment account as well. So I recommend looking into that. And lastly, taxable brokerage account. So this is an account that is not a retirement account. This is just your own investment account for any of those, like, if you're in your 30s or 20s, maybe you have goals in 10, 15 years that you're like, oh, I'd love to be able to pull a chunk of money out, or saving for a house, or I want to retire early. This is the account you want to be able to save up that money and let it grow and be able to take it out before you turn 60. Lastly, you can go back to your 401k and add more to it if you hadn't maxed it out yet. And yeah, that's a short version here of my investment ladder. Great job. High fives. Like I said, if you're interested in learning more about this, and if you're in the New York City area, on April 22nd, it's a Wednesday night in Brooklyn, I'm teaching the full 2-hour version of this workshop. It's called What the Fund. It's an investing workshop for beginners, and I would love to see you there. I'm going to include a link in a second of how to get tickets to that. And like I said, I'm also a money coach. So go ahead, take a screenshot of this slide. I don't need to read it all to you, but if you're interested in working with a money coach on, your money goals, your challenges, trying to get you on the right track, I would love to chat. And I always offer a free 30-minute session just to talk through those things before committing to anything. So I'd love to work with you. Go ahead and follow me on Instagram. I post information on future workshops on there and just little silly videos with money tips. And once again, there is the QR code to that April 22nd workshop. Whew, all right, we did it. 30 minutes. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, or I don't even know if we have time for questions, but I'd be happy to take some or whatever you think, Jesse.
Amazing. First of all, thank you so much. Huge round of applause. I gotta say out loud, like, it's hard to have an informative workshop that's like also really entertaining. And I've been fully entertained this entire time, which is also making it easy to learn these things. So you are so necessary, so talented, and we really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Let's see, we got 10 out of 10 on your slides. So helpful, super informative, all the good things. So use these QR codes on the screen. Snap. We'll also be sending links in an email recap after the entire event with all of our speakers' information. So Mel.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. It's great having you on. All right. Next up, great way to start, right? Next up, we have Devin Weber of Creator Tax Solutions. She is a tax professional. We're diving into taxes, y'all. We get this question a lot, these questions a lot. She's a QuickBooks certified bookkeeper and a small business owner herself with a decade of experience in the creator economy specifically. So I'm going to bring Miss Devin Weber up on the screen now. Welcome, Devin, and I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Jessie. Hey guys, I am so excited to be here because I love talking about taxes. I could probably do a 5-hour webinar myself. We won't do that today. But I am going to try to, in the next 30 minutes, just give you a good overview of this topic. And I'm really glad that I'm coming on after Mel because I feel the same. Money is power. Money has been used traditionally to control others and to control women. And us understanding money, and especially taxes, is so key to our own prosperity and being able to be independent and not rely on someone who maybe isn't going to be the best person in your life. So it's a topic very near and dear to my heart. And also, I don't think there's anything scarier than getting a letter from the IRS. So we will go into this topic and try to ease some of your fears. So I'm going to show my slides here. And we're going to talk about budgets, taxes, and more. Because when we talk about creator taxes, it all depends on your profit, right? So in this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. Benjamin Franklin. And then currently, I added gas prices always rising. We're at $5 a gallon here in Oregon. I don't even know what's happening. But how are taxes different in the creator economy? And I get this question all the time. And the truth is, they aren't. Taxes are taxes. And you are taxed based on your income, no matter how you generate it. And the IRS has very explicit guidelines for self-employed income and expenses. The more you know and understand those guidelines and know how to play the game, the more you can be causative over that bottom line figure, right? If you understand how you're being taxed and what you're being taxed on, then you can actually be in control of that final number. And this is why I tell people, you need to know where you stand throughout the year. Figuring it out in January is horrible, and in April 14th is even worse. So I wanted to do this talk now because it's only April 2nd, and I can still help you through this talk if you yourself have not put your figures together yet. So self-employment taxes is the most commonly misunderstood topic on taxes. I will do taxes for someone, and let's say they have 20,000 of profit from brand deals or TikTok payouts, and they're expecting to owe their normal 12% bracket on that for the IRS. Of course you will, but you're also going to owe 15.4% of that income. And this is because throughout the year, Social Security and Medicare have not been being withheld from a paycheck. When you get a paycheck from an employer, you'll see on it these lines. Sometimes it's called FICA, F-I-C-A, Federal Insurance Contributions Act. And you pay half out of your paycheck and the employer matches. So you pay 7.7% and so do they. And that's not happening when you're self-employed. So all of your profit is subject to the 15.4% until you hit that maximum that even applies to your paycheck. And every year it adjusts, but this year it was 176,000. I would love to have 176,000 self-employed profit. That would be a great problem to have. So just have no profit and then you're all good, right? No taxes owed. I get that a lot. Someone's like, well, I'll just spend all the money. No, don't do that. Why? Well, don't spend $1 to save 45 cents. If you really look at your net profit, right? You might owe $1,500 in taxes on $10,000, but you're still going to have $8,500. But if you spent all your $10,000 profit, you have $0 left. So this is where budgeting is key. Knowing how much you've spent. The biggest problem I see with clients who are new to being self-employed is they didn't track things during the year and they spent more money than they thought. And now we're overpaying taxes to the IRS. No one wants to pay the IRS more money than they should. So keep track of it. And that's where like a monthly budget sheet, just some form of tracking. You don't have to pay for QuickBooks. I'm totally with Mel. I love me a free Google Sheet. That is completely sufficient for most people. And intentional spending. So I want to talk about intentional spending a bit because all of us spend money, right? We have a cell phone, internet. We have so many apps we pay for these days. My Lord, look at my bank statement. I'm like, what? $9.99, $4.99, 99 cents. It all adds up. And a lot of these charges can actually be associated with helping you in your self-employed business. The IRS rule is the expense ordinary and necessary? And if you can prove to the IRS that that expense is ordinary and necessary for the course of your business, you can 100% take it as an expense. And that's something that needs a lot more education because especially in the creator economy, a lot of the tax accountants out there are not on TikTok. They're not on Instagram. They don't actually know what it takes to create a reel. There is a lot of work that goes into TikTok videos a lot. And there are a lot of things you need to buy. And there's a lot of apps for video editing or adding on subtitles. There's just so many expenses that can be associated. And then the biggest one I find is you. If you're a creator, you are your brand and you have to look a certain way and represent yourself a certain way. So I have my clients track all of their expenses all year for hair and makeup and beauty. We don't necessarily take all of the expenses on their tax return, but we track it and we really look at what could be applicable and what is really pushing the envelope. But let's say that you have a huge event that you're attending and you need to like get your hair did. We are fully taking that expense as an advertising expense on your tax return. So it's just really important to know the guidelines so that you can be intentional about your spending, right? I have a lot of tax clients in New York. I love New York, greatest city on earth. I visit there every year and I always schedule tax client meetings. Now it's a business trip, right? Something that would not have been tax deductible before is now tax deductible because I planned ahead of time. So there's a lot of intentionality that can help you with your taxes. And that gets into the magic of taking money you already spend and turning it into a business expense. And I actually made a handout for all of you, and you can get it through your email. And it lists the most common self-employed expenses. And a lot of these are things that you spend every day anyway. Like I said, our cell phone, our internet, a lot of stuff with our vehicles, our homes, etc. Like I once adopted 2 little pugs and they had a lot of needs in terms of like grooming, and it was a little rough. They were rescues. And so I named my company after them and I put them on my business card, and then all of their grooming was advertising. So intentional spending. How do we take money that you're gonna spend anyway that would ordinarily not impact your tax return at all and have it help your tax return, right? And that is the beauty of being self-employed, because you don't get to do that with a W-2. So you have a lot of freedoms with being self-employed. Yes, you have the bummer of doing your tax return and you get to the end and you're like, well, yeah, an extra 15.4%. But, my friend who just works in a law office and is on a W-2, if she wants to go to New York, none of that is helping her taxes owed. She's not getting a refund from the money withheld on her W-2. So you can be very, very smart with it if you track it, right? So here's my best practices. And check your budget, please. The biggest thing that I tell my clients and that I almost have arguments with is just check it every month. Take your bank statement and put it in a spreadsheet. You can actually download it as a CSV file from your bank. You don't have to type a thing. And then you can organize by the expense column of who it was to. You can see every Chevron, every Starbucks, and you just organize it up and make the sheet do the math for you of how much you spent in each category. Or use AI to evaluate it. Yes, indeed. Claude is actually very good at that. I'm so old school though. I love me a spreadsheet. And then based on this, please make estimated quarterly tax payments to the IRS and the state. And if you're in New York City, to New York City too. Just had a rude awakening myself here where I thought everything was done on time and we paid on time well before the deadline. And New York City was like, nah, you're late. And so I looked it up and they're really intense about quarterly payments. And if you're not paying New York City quarterly for your self-employed or business taxes, they considered you paid late. So April 15th is a lie. Yes, NYC is killer. But yeah, April 15th is not actually the deadline to pay, even for the IRS. If you're self-employed, there are 4 quarters that you should be paying income tax for. April 15th, which again, terrible. Who in the world is paying a first quarter tax payment? I guess people who did all the quarters before, good people. And then June 15th, September 15th, and January 15th. So if you just make estimated payments based on the profit that you see, because you're doing your sheet every month, you'll be golden. And if you don't, not only will you owe, you'll have an estimated tax penalty for paying late. And then tracking your net profit, not just your budget. Exactly. Because I have a budget sheet that I'm just going to send out to you. It's super basic, but it also helps put money aside for the taxes. I have a calculation in there of how much should you set aside for taxes, how much should you set aside for savings. I am a big believer in having at least a month's worth of emergency funds, just in a crazy economy right now, and you never know what's going to happen. And having that safety net makes you feel better. And I totally agree with Mel. High yield savings account. Capital One has an amazing one right now for 3.4% interest, and it's all online. Very easy to put your money in there. Highly recommend. Not sponsored by them. Should be. So put your savings and your tax money into a high yield savings account. Let it do something for you until you need it every quarter. And then I didn't put it on here, but retirement. Retirement can be incredible as self-employed because you're actually eligible for different retirement plans where you can put in more than the annual limit of $7,000. You can actually put in up to 25% of your profit. If you have, $100,000 of profit, that's 25 grand that you can throw into your retirement. And in the years when you're making the most money, that can be very helpful to lower your tax burden now. Yes, you will pay on it later, but I think theoretically the idea is that you're overall income bracket is less when you take the money out. Personally, I love a mix of retirement, traditional, Roth, and then your Social Security, which theoretically will still exist when we retire. But that was it. That was my whole little presentation. I would love any questions on taxes, self-employed taxes, the most common expense deductions. Like if someone's interested in that, we can just roll through those right now. I'll just stand here for a minute.
Awesome. I think first of all, huge round of applause for you. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all your information. I will speak very personally that I work with Devin myself personally. And so do a lot of people in WIM, and huge fan. And so thank you for sharing all this information. Let me also pull up this one last time. So if anyone wants to reach out and get in touch, we'll also be sending out the PDF that Devin mentioned into that email recap. So you'll get a lot of goodies that are headed your way as soon as we're done with the live portion of this. So Devin, thank you so much for coming today and for speaking. Awesome.
Yeah, no problem. This is, like I said, I could talk about taxes for far longer than anyone actually wants to hear.
But we need it. We need it. I need it. I don't know about
it's true. It is a topic that can be stressful. A lot of my clients call me and they go, oh my God, I'm so anxious because I don't know what I'm going to do. And just being able to honestly handle the anxiety surrounding doing the tax return, to me, is such a benefit to them. And again, when we were talking about money as power and control, if you're confused, you can be controlled. And I do believe the IRS really applies that. And things surrounding taxes are intentionally confusing. So don't feel stupid if you don't understand something about taxes or seem confused, because that is the way it's supposed to be. That's how they want you to feel.
It's
right?
very wise of you to say that. And I'll just speak very personally that like, I can feel all sorts of intelligent, talented, and whatever in all these different areas, but money and just especially like taxes specifically and like ways to set up my business. We've done programming before about like, LLC versus S Corp, all that structural stuff in relation to your business can be incredibly confusing and intimidating. So one of the many things I've appreciated about you is that you just make it seem very accessible and, like I'm in really good hands. So really appreciate you being here. And we'll also probably throw in to the recap of this chat, one of your old like the videos that you did with us prior. So in case you're interested in those topics as well, the structure of the business and everything, that could be useful for you guys. So Devin, thank you so much for joining us. And we are moving on to our next speaker, Kristen Ryan Spahn. She's a creator economy finance expert. And she's going to be chatting with all of you guys today about the economics of the creator economy, and followed by one more speaker after her. So stick around. Really, really good topic still coming up. I'm going to bring up Kristen to the stage. Oh, hold on one second. Bye, Devin. Thank you so much, Kristen, for coming and joining us today. Another New Yorker. We have like a few New Yorkers today. So thank you so much for joining, and I'm excited to hear from you. So take it away.
Thank you. Excited to be here. I'm going to have to try really hard to match the beautiful energy that is Mel and Devin, but here we go. Here we go. Amazing. Hi. So I am Kristen Spahn. I am the CEO and founder of LG Consulting. And Jessie will tell you, because she was here with me in early days, that we very accidentally stumbled into the creator economy, but are so grateful to be here. So LG Consulting, we work exclusively in the talent management space. We work with everyone from individual talent up to agencies. Agencies, I would say, are our bread and butter. We've dabbled a lot more with the talent, because a lot of our agencies come to us and they're like, our talent need help. So on the talent level, most of the time we're doing bookkeeping. And then for the agencies, most of our agencies have completely outsourced their accounting function to us. So we handle sort of A to Z accounting, which is kind of where my focus is going to be today, because I feel like most people in WIM fall in that agency model bucket. So we were having this conversation this morning. Accounting, to me, accounting is a system, right? And so one thing that I'm really passionate about when we step into our agency's business is systematizing their accounting function in a way that they're protecting themselves and that they can actually scale. So I think a lot of us that are business owners know that a lot of times when people start, they wing it. And that, again, that's tale as old as time in any business, but I feel so adamant and protective about systematizing and making sure accounting is really well built on the back end in the creator economy, for the mere fact that most agencies up to 80-85% are pass-through entities, right? So most of us are billing on behalf of our talent, and 80% of that revenue isn't actually yours, right? So you really, really, really want to make sure you protect yourself, you protect your finances, and you protect your reputation by having a seamless accounting process so that your talent are happy at the end of the day. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit more about how to build out that back office for creator economy businesses, chart of accounts designed for actual revenue model. Again, because this industry operates in the way that it does and agencies are structured the way that they are, and I'm sure Devin can tell you this too, when you look at the financials of most agencies, most of them are on cash basis accounting. And so their P&Ls can fluctuate like this every single month. And that's just a timing thing. That's a timing thing of being a cash basis. But at the end of the day, you really need to make sure that you have all the pertinent financial information and that you're understanding. We started with a new client a couple of months ago, and I opened up the P&L, and it was done by an accounting team who wasn't familiar with the industry, looking at the chart of accounts. And I asked them, I'm like, what does this mean? They're like, we don't know. Like, they set this up and language was so unclear that they were looking at financials that they actually had no idea what their true revenue and expenses look like. Keeping clean accounts receivable and your payable process from day one. A lot of us are already mid-journey or very far down the line. So that's not to say you can't get a hold of it. But if you are someone that's newer, I so encourage starting now with the right foundation of making sure you're invoicing on time. You have a system for measuring that. And again, I'm going to get into all this a little bit further on. And a lot of that can be aided with softwares, whether it's QuickBooks, to Devin's point, if you're just starting out, Google Sheets, maybe it's both, but making sure you're utilizing software to accommodate and help that to the extent that you need it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about signs that your current setup is possibly holding you back. Although what's interesting is I will say most agencies that come to us already intuitively know what is holding them back, which is obviously why they're reaching out. But we'll get into that a little bit more. Okay, so cash flow and AR follow-up, right? This is you getting requests out there into the world to get your money. So what that looks like in an ideal world, an ideal system, is invoicing immediately. A lot of agencies do this differently, and not saying that there's any one right way, but you need to make sure you have complete ownership over your invoice function. And this goes for any industry, not even just the creator economy, is making sure you're getting paid, right? So every day that you sit there like, oh, I have all these invoices to send out, that's a day that you're creating in delay of actually getting paid, right? And it depends on the contract, but a lot of times brands start the clock when they receive the invoice. So if you sit on sending an invoice for 7 days, that net 30, net 60, net 90, which I'm sure all of us can attest. I mean, when I started in this industry, I would say most payment terms were net 30. Now we're getting net 9. We're almost up to the point where most things are net 60, net 90. So making sure that as soon as you can invoice, campaign goes live, whatever the contract says, that you get that out there. I would say if there's one person, if you're not going to outsource this, but if there's one person in the business, if you're going to keep it internal, in-house, have it be one person. Don't have it. I talked to an agency the other day and they're like, all of our talent managers send their own invoices. Not knocking, but again, I can imagine that that's a lot of cooks in the kitchen overseeing this process. So really trying to keep it neat and clean. With our smaller agencies, a lot of the time it's like we're sending those invoices and then we have a Google spreadsheet where we're tracking the invoices just as backup. It doesn't have to be a big fancy thing, but get those invoices out because that is how you're going to get paid and it's how you're going to get your talent paid. Building a consistent AR follow-up cadence. I know this is something that everyone hates to do. It's annoying. It's difficult, right? There's this fine line between the fact that you have this brand relationship, which is why you're getting this deal, right? But also you need to sometimes, we know that these brands are not always timely and they make us jump through hoops to get paid. So it's really towing that line and staying on top of it. So you don't have to get aggressive because now you're, 15, 20, 30, whatever the amount is overdue, that you are on top of it and you kind of keep the lid on it so that you don't have to compromise that relationship again. If you're doing it in-house, if you're outsourcing it to somebody like us, I always say, let us be the bad guys, but really having a follow-up cadence that works for you and is attainable and achievable. For anyone that says like, I just hit reminder in QuickBooks, I will tell you that does not get you paid. Maybe once or twice it will, but it really most of the time requires like a human to go in and ask questions because as we well know, there's always the brand who's like, oh, wait, we actually needed this vendor form filled out. And it's like, well, you could have told us that when we sent the invoice, but that's a story for another day. So really building an AR follow-up cadence that's making sure you're getting paid in a timely manner because at the end of the day, that is your cash flow, right? And you also do not want your talent bugging you. Separating operating cash from talent disbursements. This is where I would say most people who find themselves in trouble, this is where it happens. There should never be a situation where you're borrowing money from Peter to pay Paul, right? Then we're in dire straits if we've gotten to that point. And what I mean by that is that you need to be managing your cash flow in a way that you're not eating into talent funds and kind of getting in this pit of like constantly borrowing from talent funds and waiting for more to come in so that you can keep up. At a certain point, you can't keep up with that, right? And it's not your money to spend. So really keeping things clean and separate and organized. I call it separating church and state, making sure your money is over here. And again, that might not be that you have two separate bank accounts. I'm not saying that, but you need to make sure like if you're doing talent payments every other week or monthly, if you're not on a weekly cadence, making sure you're earmarking like, okay, I have these payments that I have to go out to my, business vendors, making sure you're not exceeding what you have and what you're holding in talent funds. I will say where I see most people get over their skis in this industry is with people cost, whether it's contractors, whether it's payroll, you're just spending more than you're making, which I guess that's the fallacy of any business. But I feel it's way more sensitive in this space because you're essentially a custodian of so much of this cash that's not actually yours. And then I think it was Devin earlier, or maybe it was Mel, building cash reserves to bridge brand gap payments. Again, we are seeing it more and more that brands are taking longer to pay, payment terms are longer. So making sure you have runway when brand payments are not coming in the cadence that you expected. I always say conservatively 6 months of operating costs. Some people are more comfortable with 3. Obviously, in a startup world, you put away what you can. But I would say trying to build to that reserve of 3 to 6 months of runway, especially if you're somebody that carries payroll. Talent payments done right. So again, obviously keeping things separate, but also from the get-go, keeping things clean and organized because it's going to save you or your accounting team a ton of time at your end. To the extent that you can, to get a talent paid, you're going to need bank details. When you collect those bank details, you should always be collecting a W-9. And what that is going to help is to make sure you're not chasing them come the following January when you realize you need to issue them a 1099 because you've paid them more than $600. It is just an absolute pain and an absolute nightmare to, on an administrative level, try to keep up with that. So you onboard a new talent, get their ACH details, that's how you're going to pay them, and then get their W-9. And if you're using a software like QuickBooks to store all that information, you can run the 1099s from there. If you're using the likes of Gusto, a lot of these platforms will store the information. So I would say, you get that W-9, you enter their information in whatever accounting system that you're using, and then it's there and it's done. And come, October, November, as you're preparing for year end, you can kindly send an email to everyone. Hey, if you have an updated W-9, send us the information. But otherwise, you're good, you're set, because unless they're an S Corp or a C Corp, that is a legal requirement as you as an agency have to send them a 1099 if you've paid them over $600. Setting clear payment timelines in every talent contract. Again, you are negotiating on behalf of your talent. And yes, you have to get them paid, but you also have to keep yourself paid. So if you are going to deal with a brand that you're not familiar with, that you can't really financially vet, making sure that you're putting parameters to the extent that you can in those contracts to protect yourself, whether it's asking for payment up front or 50% upfront and 50% after you go live. But really making sure you're protecting your cash flow in that very first step and interaction that you're having with that brand when you're contracting. Documented disbursement process with approval steps. This is going to be, any accountant is ever going to tell you that you should have segregation of duties and protect yourself and protect your assets. Again, so to the extent that you can, I know we're all small businesses and we wish we had a lot of hands. But if you are going to have an external team that's going to release these payments, making sure you always have transparency into what came in, what's going out, and approving that. Or if you have someone in-house on your team that you're seeing what came in, how they're paying it out, just, making sure that you have a system of checks and balances in place. And again, the overall objective of all of this is protecting both yourself legally and keeping your talent happy. So this doesn't have to be a super complicated thing, but it is incredibly important. I also think the extent to which you can give talent transparency into this process is so significant. And that's not an accounting thing. That's just good business practice, good relationship, and good for your reputation and your rapport with your talent. Okay, so much to Devin and Mel's point earlier, I would say it's been so interesting being in this space because I have founders who want to know every little thing, all the nitty-gritty details, and then I have some people that are like, don't tell me anything unless I'm going out of business. And there's no right one size fits all for everyone, but as a founder, you should have the financial clarity that you need to make informed business decisions at every single turn. The first thing that starts with is clean books and organization around your financials. So even if that's on a basic level, just hiring someone to do your monthly bookkeeping, making sure everything is being ticked, tied, and reconciled. We've gone into books before where they've been categorizing stuff, but they haven't been reconciling stuff. And therefore, they're looking at financials that are completely unreliable or wrong. So really making sure that your books are neat and clean so that you can operate off of timely, clean financials, because that's going to drive all of your decision making, especially if you're thinking about growth, scale, hiring, and what have you. I wouldn't say it's even most agency owners, but most small business owners, I think, just live in their bank account and checking that cash balance and being like, are we okay? Are we going to be okay? You need to be reading your financials. You need to be looking at what are we bringing in? What is going out? What is our people cost? Where are we spending money? To Devin's point earlier, how many damn subscriptions and softwares are we all signed up for? Looking into that stuff, like maybe I can delete or remove some of these. We haven't used this platform in 6 months. So digging into your financials and really understanding that financial position, again, because this industry, most people are that sort of 80% pass-through model. On its surface, you can see like, oh, I billed $4 million. It's like, well, actually only 20% of that is yours, right? So using your financials, using what you can pull down from the likes of a QuickBooks to say, what do we need to be making to cover our people costs? How do we back into like the goal that this team has, whether it's you or it's a team of talent managers, but backing into that goal based on what your cost is. And maybe if you're a solopreneur, that's like, I just want to make $200,000 this year. We'll back into that of how much do you need to be billing? What's realistic for you to be billing based on your current roster and your capacity? But please look at your financial statements and understanding your margin by clients and service. I have had a lot of conversations with agencies over the years where talent might have performed beautifully and been your biggest client on your roster 2 or 3 years ago. And now those, we all know this industry is so ever evolving and changing. And I feel like it's changing quicker every day. But some of those talent that were bringing in a ton of money and were a huge part of your revenue a couple of years ago might not be now. And having metrics on those people so you can have informed conversations of whether or not you're going to keep them on your roster and what's actually making a difference in your cash position. Again, understanding real cash position versus reported income, because this industry is set so up and down in terms of seasonality and this pass-through element. Understanding the timing of things and predicting that to the extent that you can. Again, you can't just sit here and be like, everybody's going to pay on time. They're not. But really making sure you understand your pipeline, following up, making sure you're getting paid as quickly as you can, and having those reserve funds to bridge the gap when things don't pan out as you may have expected. And I think the biggest thing is like, it's great to go on your gut and use your gut sometimes as that check, but making growth decisions with data. I always say scale without strategy is a recipe for meltdown. You cannot scale if you don't have strategy. And so building that strategy can be informed by having timely, informative financial statements. So just key takeaways before I take some questions if anyone has any, but making sure you get your financial house in order. That is really the underpinning of your entire business. It's all you have at the end of the day outside of your reputation. So making sure that the systems work. I will say, just from like a time value of money standpoint, everyone has limited finite time. And so if you can afford to outsource things, great, right? Because it gives you the time to go out and be getting deals and forging relationships and building your roster. So if this is one thing that you can afford to outsource, I would say do it sooner rather than later, because it is almost impossible to play CEO, COO, CMO, all the things, right? We only have a certain number of hours in the day. Again, invoice fast, follow up consistently, know your numbers. If you are currently working with a bookkeeper or an accounting team and you are not getting financial statements every single month, that is a problem. They should be getting those to you in a timely manner so that you have all the information that you need at any given time to make informed business decisions. So if you're in a situation that is not happening, I would be emailing them tomorrow and ask them to make sure they're sending you your financials every month. And again, protecting your talent relationships through proper process and documentation, protecting your brand relationship outside of, systematizing this. As I said earlier, your reputation is everything you have other than making sure you get paid and pay people out. So really making sure you can give talent transparency and that they feel good and trusted, because ultimately you are the custodians of their wealth and their income, as you are for yourself. So I think that's all I've got. If anyone has any questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kristen. Another person that I can personally vouch for. And I appreciate that because I feel like as soon as I started getting like reports and like real insights into my business as a business owner, I was finally able to make so much better informed decisions. Otherwise it's really just like complete guesswork. And
You're operating on a hope and a prayer at that point.
100%. And like gut instincts. And, you know, as an entrepreneur, like gut instincts are important, but with the backbone of, you know, actual numbers and, you know, real practical information that comes directly from your business. So agree, definitely make sure that, you know, reports and stuff like that are coming. And also those are things that you can fine tune over time. You know, you can add, you know, more columns and kind of tweak them and continue to dive deeper and deeper. But really great conversation. You're the best. Thank you so much for doing this today. And continue to drop stuff into the chat, you guys, if you have any questions. Our speakers are still here because we are moving on to our last speaker of the night. I know a lot of you are sticking around because you were super excited to hear from her and all of our speakers, of course. So I'm very excited to bring up Maya Schaff to the stage. Hi, Maya. Thank you so much for being with us today. So a little bit about Maya, and then she'll introduce herself. So she is formerly of Hatch, where she led their influencer marketing. She scaled their influencer program from scattered efforts to a 7-figure purchase driving machine, which is just an incredible story. I know a lot of people within WIM would love to be able to work with a 7-figure budget. And I think that we can all aspire to, you know, increased budgets and, you know, having all of these different touch points to play with in terms of our influencer programs. And so we're very excited to learn from you. So take it away, Maya.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I have put together a presentation that hopefully will be applicable for people who maybe don't have a 7-figure budget yet, but are hoping to get there and can put some practices into place to do so. So to just give you a little bit of background about me, I have been in the social space for about 20 years. My fun little anecdote is that I was doing PR for a company called Competitor Group that runs the Rock and Roll Marathon series. And I was doing research in the PR tool, looking at whatever I was supposed to be looking at, and Twitter kept popping up in the feed. And so I went to the senior vice president and I was like, there's this thing called Twitter. We're not theirs. And since we're not there, even if people are saying great things about us or terrible things about us, we have no voice. And he looked at me and he said, I have no idea what you just said. Never bring this up to me again. Just go do it. And that really started my whole career in social. So I built a social program at that company. I spent about 8 years on the agency side, and then I came to Hatch. And at Hatch, I was the first brand side hire, but the last couple years of my time at Hatch, I ran the influencer program. So we'll talk all about that. I left Hatch at the end of last year and I'm doing consulting now, but I'm going to take you through how we built that program and why it worked as well as it did. Oh, thanks, Jesse. I was just going to ask you to do that. Okay, so the first thing that I want to start with is that you would think that having a big budget would like automatically mean you have amazing results, but it really doesn't. You really have to build a foundation for a program in order to create exponential growth. And we all know that budgets are coming into the influencer space more and more. And there's a reason for that because it really works. And at Hatch, the way that it started out, we were actually, when I first came on, like in 2022, we were running an affiliate program. So it was like very much the spray and pray model. We had a ton of affiliates. It was all like code-based metrics. And truthfully, it was not converting and it wasn't really helping us as a brand either. So we completely shut that program off. And, you know, then in about 2023, midway through 2023, an influencer posted about us organically and she said some great things about Hatch. It was totally unprompted. and we saw Black Friday level sales on that day. And that, if anything gets the attention of senior leadership, it's Black Friday level sales, not on Black Friday. So the team was like, how do we make this into a system and a program? And I got the opportunity to raise my hand and say, I think I can build this. So one thing that I do want to also mention is that while budget doesn't equal results, we did get budget. We got investment to start the program with. I got investment to start the program with, but even more importantly, I got time. So I started to figure out what this program was going to look like. But I didn't immediately need to turn around and say, well, here's the exact return, or here's the CAC on the program. And having time to be able to prove out a system like this is crucial to success. So I think that a lot of people maybe skip over that part, or maybe people inherit programs that are already running in the flywheel system that I'm about to explain. But, it's easy to have a program fail if leadership is like, oh, CAC looks bad after 6 weeks, So I think that one main thing that I would emphasize if you are championing for more budget, or if you're trying to build a program from scratch, is communicating upfront that you'll need time to allow the program to breathe and prove itself out. Okay, so let me show you what I mean by actually building an efficient program. So most brands start out with affiliate focused programs. So they're code-based metrics, redemptions on codes. They are really based on high levels of scale. So there's a pretty general or generic creative direction. And very crucially, you are not building relationships with those creators because it's about scale. And at least at Hatch, the results were so low that it's hard to even believe that we were running the program when I inherited it. So as I mentioned, we totally turned that off. Because one thing that I think people don't really think about as much in the affiliate space, and it's evolving so much. I mean, there's so much progress happening in the affiliate space right now. So I am definitely not trying to bag on it at all. But when we were running it at Hatch, our affiliate program was really running through stories. And stories were not only disappearing in 24 hours, but since we were using that spray and pray model, and that came back to how we were briefing the creators, it also meant that we weren't really controlling the narrative. And controlling the narrative isn't just about one piece of content. It's about how to create a viral product out of a whole set of content that comes from creators. And you can't do that if you're doing that all within stories. And not only that, you really aren't giving the creators a reason to care about your program, because they know as well as you know that the only thing that matters is how well they sell. And so what I started with was building a relationship-based full funnel program. And I think that made the biggest difference in investing in the creator relationships themselves. And what did that look like? One thing that looked like is that I met with almost about 90% of the creators that we worked with at Hatch. Sometimes that was 20 creators in a month, and sometimes that was 60 creators in a month. We worked with an agency. They would handle scheduling and outreach and block my calendar. And then I would show up to a lot of 15-minute briefing calls. And we did go over the brief, but we also just created a human connection, which is seems so obvious, but nobody does that. I will tell you that the number of times that I showed up to one of those calls and the creator was like, I've never met anyone from a brand before, was too many. So it's a real differentiator. And, I would do my due diligence. I would try to review their content before every call. So I would have a sense of okay, this one got 3 million views and this one got 500,000 views. So how can we create, how do we develop a creative direction together that's more in the 3 million direction than the 500,000 direction? And so I'd come in and I'd take them through some brand attributes. Are you trying to go to bed at the same time every night, or are you trying to stop doom scrolling? And the creator would say, oh my God, I've been, thinking about trying to stop doom scrolling. And that's my goal for 2026 or something like that. And I'd say, okay, well then let's build the brief that way. So there was that sounds like, again, I think like it sounds so simple, but doing that and being able to make that connection and just like listening to somebody talk about what's important to them and then matching it with what's important to you as the brand, the dividends are really incredible, and the quality of the content that comes out of that is really high. And furthermore, you get people who become brand advocates because they see that you really care enough to spend time with them. So then they start to do things that benefit you and the brand that maybe sometimes are beyond even what's contracted before them. So sometimes maybe you would get organic posts that you didn't pay for, or you're included in the background of a post. But like, that's great. I love that. But what's really more important is that you get creators who really understand what you're trying to say. And so they can reliably say it to their audiences in a way that the audience trusts, because they actually believe it and they actually understand what they're saying. And when you have like a higher AOV product, like a Hatch, not many people are impulse buying a $179 alarm clock, but they buy it because they heard from somebody that they trust that it really changed their sleep and that it really matters. So that relationship starts to become a real crucial foundation for the program. Okay, on to the next. Your budget can be flexed in a way that maximizes conversions, but also maximizes awareness. And at Hatch, we ran our content against like a very cyclical brand calendar focused approach where we sequenced all of the content strategically. And how we did that is that about 6 to 8 weeks before a major brand moment or promo period, on the influencer side, I was running awareness content. So that meant that the brief was a little bit different. The creative direction was a little bit different. We were trying to come into people's worlds in a way that made them aware of the product, but we weren't yet trying to say, oh, Hatch can help you stop doom scrolling and you should try it or buy it now. We were saying, hey, isn't it funny, this like shared struggle that we all have to put our phones down at night? Isn't it funny that like everybody hates their alarm sound? So things like that were funny and charming and kind of opened up the creative opportunity in a different way. That's what we were running when we were running awareness about 6 to 8 weeks out from like a brand campaign or promo moment. And one thing that's interesting about that is that we were really like, our aim was to get eyeballs, but our growth team was boosting about 40% of that content, just to give you a sense of like that integration. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, like how influencer and growth overlapped. But I think it's interesting that like we also got buy-in to get paid investment in the upper funnel. Okay, but those people aren't buying yet, and that's fine because we don't want them to buy. All we want them to do is become aware that Hatch can play in this conversation about sleep and about phone usage. Okay, so then as we got closer to that brand moment or promo moment, we were bringing them down the funnel. We were running consideration-focused content that was happening about 4 weeks out, and we'd focus on features and benefits, but it was still in a kind of lightweight way. So like instead of saying buy now, it might be like, here's how you feel when you put your phone away at 9 p.m. instead of at 11 p.m. Or here's what it's like when you don't sleep with your phone in the bed. So we were like bringing them down a little bit and like hitting it a little bit harder and starting to position ourselves as a solution to those problems. But we definitely, like, that content still wasn't aiming to convert, although we were measuring it like in more like mid-funnel metrics. So think like a click-through or an add to cart. And then we would get to that brand moment or that promo moment, and we were trying to convert them. So that would be, calls to action, testimonials, buy it now, and capturing all of that demand that we just built at the exact right moment. And the craziest thing about building a full funnel program and creating this flywheel, so that this cyclical kind of brand calendar flywheel approach, is that sometimes our upper funnel content would actually convert. And sometimes something that was like just supposed to convert would actually get like 5 million views. And it was really interesting because you could actually see the flywheel in the data instead of just like, kind of setting a strategy and saying like, we think this will work. It was like, no, actually the way the content is performing is in alignment with how we structured the program. Okay, and here's the last thing that I'll mention about how we kind of built a moment for ourselves. We would create conversations before we really like announced the solution that we had to offer. So when we launched Restore 3 in January, I had creators talking about screen time and doom scrolling in December. And actually, they were seeding the conversation for our product launch that was going to happen in January, but they didn't even know it. We wanted people talking about phones as the antithesis to rest, but they were still talking about like the older model. And then when January hit, the conversation already existed in our market, in our funnel. I like to think of this as an alley-oop, which is silly, but anyway, it's like you alley-oop yourself, right? And then you dunk it. So we created these ways of sequencing our content in a really strategic way that, you know, you might have heard the term manufactured virality. And that's kind of what we were doing. We were building a conversation, and then we were able to just be in the right place at the right time because we created it for ourselves. Okay, here is another thing that I see a lot of brands doing that makes things quite needlessly, in my opinion, difficult. A lot of programs are really bifurcated between teams. So I see programs where there is the brand influencer budget and there is the growth influencer budget. And they run through independent teams. They have different measures of success. And what we did is we literally put those together into one program. So you can see how what we were just talking about, that flywheel, it was more possible because we built it this way. You really lose those dividends because the teams don't talk to each other, and they don't measure the same way, and they don't think about success in the same way. So once we started to like create these shared strategies, these shared measures, our efficiency started to really pick up. And I think it also just helps to communicate. Like we could just speak more effectively to each other because we all were aiming in the same direction and we were all speaking the same language. And I think like when you think about a lot of programs that are trying to measure against a CAC target, like that goes back to having time, and it goes back to how you're thinking about the kind of foundational system of the program. And if you are trying to create a brand building program, but then you're looking at CAC as your metric of success, of course it's not going to look great. That content wasn't meant to convert. So really showing that your team, like this content is built for this result and it's briefed in a different way, and it might include different creators depending on what the strategy looks like. You know, being able to tie that to then what's also happening at the bottom of the funnel and then giving it a little bit of time is a true game changer for really any influencer program. And so anyway, so you need both. We looked at it as we called it like brand building and then product focused. So we still kind of like made those, we still kind of had that like divide, like we knew what content was doing what, but it was all under one program. Furthermore, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't remember if this is on the next slide or not, but one thing that also really helps with this is that then you can use the same creator for multiple types of content. And there's a lot of benefits to that because you have one time that you do outreach and one contract, and their audience is more familiar with you, and they can help their audience and your audience, if you're boosting the content, to go through the funnel in a really like natural and cohesive way. Sorry, hopefully I'm not going to repeat myself in a second. Okay. Oh yeah, what we're tracking. Okay, so let's talk about tracking. I just kind of made a reference to this, but most programs really like they're tracking clicks, CAC, ROAS, and how many people converted, right? But it's too limiting when you think about a full funnel program. And especially when you're trying to think about building trust with your audiences, you can't build trust with them if all you do is sell to them. So I think being able to start to communicate that at the leadership level was helpful, and it really like made a difference for how we could think about what success looked like. And I also built an analytics framework that connected influencer program to awareness, to branded search lift to downstream conversion. So I could literally tell leadership, here is what went live. Here we can see it creating demand, which we measured in impressions, and it was a little bit complicated. And if you want to know more about that, reach out to me. But okay, so we'll just call it impressions for now. So we could see it creating demand. We could see that we spiked these impressions, and that might be through organic content. It might be through boosted content. We just want as many eyeballs as we can possibly get. And then we can see that people are coming into our consideration phase because guess what? Branded search is going up. And then we can see how demand got captured in the next promo cycle. And meanwhile, actually, Google search is up 100% year over year. So we could see in the metrics that this was working. I actually put it into ChatGPT, which is not the best tool for that. So just a word to the wise. But I looked at like how many impressions our influencer program generated. And then I looked at those downstream metrics to see if I could find a correlation. And there was a correlation. So I could see like, oh, impressions went like this. And then there was a waterfall effect. Oh, then Google search trends actually spiked. And oh, then sales spiked. So being able to show the program cohesively and also like show in the metrics what it actually looks like to show upper funnel success leading to low funnel, bottom funnel success, that definitely made a big difference in how leadership accepted the program and also like if they wanted to invest more, because they did, because it was working. Okay. Okay, let's bring it all together. Number one, invest in the relationship. And that might even mean you sacrifice relationships to scale. It doesn't feel efficient to meet with 50 creators in a month, but it is, because those creators become brand advocates. Maybe they post organically, but more importantly, your program starts to compound. You start to have an ecosystem around your brand, and you're not just like churning through people and being like, okay, we worked with, 2,000 people this month. Number two, plan backward from your core marketing moments, building demand 6 to 8 weeks out, then nurturing them 4 weeks out, and then converting at the right moment. Seeding the conversation right before you're ready to be the solution. Okay, number three, build one program, not two. Brand and growth really have to be running against the same roster, the same strategy, maybe not same. I take that back. Shared strategy and shared metrics of success. Everyone's always going to have like their own things that are really important to their own team, and that's okay. It's really about combining so that teams can be more efficient, they can understand each other better, and they can point to an actual metric and say, hey, we know this is working. And that perfectly alley-ooped myself to connecting the dots with metrics. So tracking impressions, branded search lift, to a blended CAC number, and creating the reporting that proves that influencer is generating and converting demand. And that's what I talk to a lot of brands about with now, about building a system and giving it time and then letting it compound and not letting it just be about one viral moment. It's about really creating a system and a flywheel. And I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Amazing. We've got a lot of great chatter in the chat. So huge round of applause. Such a great presentation and such a wonderful to round out this event. Talking about what to do with all of the, this money and, wanting to be really strategic. And I love the sports references of alley-ooping yourself into all sorts of wonderful ways.
I use that reference a lot because it just makes sense in my brain. So hopefully you guys all got it.
No, it totally does. And I love it. And it's just a great education into, and peeking into, a little bit of the behind the scenes of what it is to, have leadership also see more clearly the results of what you're doing to be able to infuse more resources and more time. So really, really wonderful to hear. And if you have any questions or want to reach out to Maya, her LinkedIn is on the screen now. And she is available. Here, let me pull that up so you can see it. So none of us are hiding it. So linkedin.com and Maya Schaff. So you can connect with her that way. We are so grateful to have you guys join us today. Super grateful to have Maya and Kristen and Devin and Mel cover topics from a 7-figure influencer budget to taxes to accounting and all the way to investing in the stock market. Where, it's incredible what you get when you have a bunch of like really intelligent women in the room who are confidently speaking about all things finances. It really uplifts everybody because all of us should feel comfortable in their financial literacy, in their personal lives, in business, and beyond. So I'm so grateful to all of our speakers today for imparting that amongst our community. Like I promised, we'll be sending you an email follow-up with all the resources that we were talking about throughout this presentation. And as you guys know, there's tons of fun events coming up in the future. So keep an eye out for more from WIM. And we will also be sending those of you who are joining today who are not a member of the community yet, a little freebie from us as well to experience all that is WIM. So have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you at the next one. Bye, guys. Thanks again.